So, what if I told you one of the most powerful forces shaping American politics was never even elected? The newly released Epstein Files aren't just about Jeffrey Epstein. I'm talking about networks and networks of money, influence, protection, and power. And it just seems one name keeps coming up in these political conversations, and that's Peter Thiel. And one politician whose rise is inseparable from Thiel's support is JD Vance. So today I want to ask the serious question. Is JD Vance an organic populist or is he just a manufactured politician? This conversation matters because democracy just doesn't disappear overnight. It gets outsourced. And I'm talking outsourced to donors, to networks, to people most voters never even see. The Epstein files matter because Epstein just wasn't a criminal. He was a hub, and hubs reveal who moves in the same elite circles. This is about power structures, not guilt by association. So let's walk through what we actually know. Peter Thiel is not just a billionaire donor, he's a kingmaker. He's a PayPal co founder. He was an early investor in Facebook. He was founder of Palantir, a company deeply embedded in US government intelligence and military systems. Thiel's worldview isn't traditional conservatism, it's tech libertarian. He is elite driven. He's skeptical of democracy as it exists today. And unlike most donors, Peter Thiel doesn't scatter money. He builds candidates. Have a look here. This is kind of sums up Peter Thiel in a nutshell. Peter Thiel's anti-democratic vision drives plans to remake America with mass surveillance and authoritarian rule. The man behind JD Vance's rise, he funds candidates to re-engineer politics, longing for technocratic executive, democracy for elites, control, crush the masses. So that pretty much sums Thiel up in a nutshell. So JD Vance did not just rise through grassroots politics. He didn't climb party leadership. His rise came through Peter Thiel's ecosystem. And here's the timeline. And this is where he got to Ohio as their candidate. And as it says, JD Vance has his own controversy. His close connection to Peter Thiel, who is poised to have unprecedented influence in a new Trump administration, should deeply unsettle every American who cares about freedom, privacy, and reigning in the surveillance state. So again, here's the timeline between JD Vance and Peter Thiel. First, he mentors him really early on. I think they went to Yale together. And so that's where they met, and he really mentored him there. And then he employs him in his venture capital fund. And then he starts introducing him to elite donors. Thiel-aligned groups inject tens of millions of dollars into Vance's Senate campaign. That money didn't just help, it literally rescued his whole campaign. So without Peter Thiel, there is no Senator JD Vance. And that's just not an opinion. That's campaign finance reality. He would have never made it that far without Peter Thiel's injection of funds. So what am I saying when I say manufactured? Like, am I saying fake? Well, it's not fake. It's very strategically constructed. The question isn't whether Vance believes what he says. The question is who elevated him, who amplified his voice. In modern politics, money just doesn't support candidates. It creates them. And you talk about even Trump, Miriam Adelson gave him over $100 million. So is he really going to go up against Israel, even if he really thinks that he should? No, because Miriam Adelson gave him over $100 million. It's AIPAC. The money control, like I said, just always follow the money and you find out where the actual control is. So it's very much where the Epstein files start coming into play. And the Epstein files, they do not accuse Peter Thiel of crimes. What they show, like many other elites, is that the contacts, the scheduling, references and shared social media networks. So it matters because Epstein connected people who later claimed no association. The concern isn't criminal guilt. The concern is overlapping elite power circles operating without transparency. And when those circles also shape politics, voters deserve to know. This is Peter Thiel on Joe Rogan saying that he doesn't really know Epstein, but he says, "Oh, I just kind of met him." But you'll see, he invested.
And then, I went
a lot of money.
I went down all
Epstein.
these rabbit holes. Was he, working for the Israelis or the Mossad or all this sort of stuff? And I've come to think that was very secondary. It was obviously it was just the U.S. if it was an intelligence operation, the question we should be asking is what part of the U.S. intelligence
Right.
system was he working for?
So the big question is, like I said, so it says there, like, Epstein put $40 million into Peter Thiel's uh, Valar. So not Palantir. Palantir had already started. So he invested $40 million into Valar, which I believe now they're saying that investment now makes Epstein's, like, his estate worth another 170 million just from that investment alone. And then later Valar invests in Carbine, which is run by Ehud Barak, who is the ex-Israeli minister or prime minister. So it's all intertwined. Again, like, just follow the money. And I will actually, from here you can see, this is where Barak Uhad is talking for the first time with Epstein about Thiel. So again, Thiel ends up, or Epstein starts to invest in Valar. Valar goes and invests in Carbine. So this is how it all started. But this is where it started here, when Epstein is telling Barack Hudad about Thiel.
He thought there was two cyber companies. Look out, and even though I know Peter, I've never met Peter Thiel. And everybody says he sort of jumps around and acts sort of strange, like he's on drugs.
Smoking, yeah.
Yeah.
He looks there under drugs.
However, he has a company called Palantir, Pallen, Tier. Palantir is Peter Thiel's company. And look out.
Palantir, P-A-L-A-N-T-I-E-L?
Yes.
How you write Thiel? T-H-I-E-L-L-Y?
Thiel.
L-L-Y.
No. Thiell.
Okay.
So he thought that Peter would put you on the board of Palantir. Peter Thiel is one of the best. I've never met him. He's going to come here next week. So I wanted to talk to him after I talked to you.
Okay.
He and Andreessen, it's called Andreessen Horowitz. Andreessen Horowitz, they pay Larry $1 million a year just to advise them.
Andreas and?
Andreessen, Andreessen, and Horowitz.
And Howard?
Horo, Horowitz.
What they are? It's a lobbyist. What they are doing?
They are the biggest venture capital people in Silicon Valley.
Well, bigger than Sequoia or Kleiner
These are the new Kleiner Perkins. Everybody, these are the smart boys. Mm-hmm. So those two companies right away, in terms of, I said that we need now in the next 3 weeks if you're going to leave.
So essentially, that's how JD Vance Peter Thiel was introduced to Barack through Epstein, and so Peter Thiel's Valar, who Epstein invested in $40 million into Valar, which is a surveillance company. Valar now invests in Carbine. So the reason he wants to introduce Ehud Barak to Thiel is because he's starting his own Israel surveillance company in Israel, and he wants Peter Thiel to help and then invest. So that's how the whole connection is. But does this really affect JD Vance at the end of the day? Like, obviously not legally, but politically, I think it absolutely affects JD Vance, because he literally branded himself as this anti-elite, the populist, America first. Yet his career was elite funded. It was tech accelerated and built by one of Silicon Valley's most powerful figures. And for Republican voters, very skeptical of billionaire control, that contradiction, it really matters, especially as debates over surveillance, tech government fusion, and centralized power intensifies. So this isn't about Epstein. It's about who builds leaders in the modern political era. Is JD Vance a populist who used elite money as a tool, or is he a polished representative of elite interest using populist, as his voting base? It's obviously not for me to decide, but voters, I think they deserve the full context of everything, because democracy doesn't collapse loudly. It gets redefined really, really quietly. So this kind of all happens behind the scenes. And if no one talks about it, it's just like no one's talking. And here's the thing about the Epstein files. The only reason that people are talking about it and seeing these interconnections and seeing these hubs and how they work is because they were pressed to release those files. A lot of people wouldn't be making a lot of these connections and seeing what's going on in the deep state if these files weren't released. But here's a video of kind of shows how JD Vance kind of made his way up through the ranks. Have a look here.
Senator JD Vance, now his running mate.
JD Vance was elected to the Senate in 2022 and went from being a staunch critic of former President Trump to one of his strongest allies to now his vice presidential nominee.
Who is this guy?
I'm a never Trump guy. I never liked him. I mean, Donald Trump has given me an incredible honor.
Do you agree that the heir apparent to MAGA is JD Vance?
Well, I think most likely, in all fairness, he's the vice president. So it's too early, obviously, to talk about it, but certainly he's doing a great job, and he would be probably favored at this point.
So it's very interesting to see his rise in US politics and the backing of Peter Thiel. And again, it all roads lead back to Israel. So Peter Thiel is a big Israel guy. And Mary Madelson, if she gave Trump $100 million, I'm sure she will back JD Vance just the same. So again, the Epstein files are not just showing obviously the corruption and the horrible things that are going on, the sex trafficking and everything else, but what it's really showing is the network behind this deep state and who is really being elected in these things or who's actually buying their way to the top. And again, AIPAC is a perfect example of how they are buying politicians. And Peter Thiel and the whole techno-libertarians, they're also buying their own candidates. So guys, let me know your thoughts. Please like, subscribe, and share. Really interested in your thoughts. Who's actually being really voted in and who's actually being manufactured by the rich elites who are just their puppets that are just going to do their bidding for them. So it's very interesting to see what will happen in the next election. And if any of these Epstein files and Peter Thiel and all their involvement is really going to affect JD Vance, because he's the number one candidate to take over from Trump. So if it's not him, who's the next one? And is the next one not going to be compromised as well? So again, please like, subscribe, share. Let me know your thoughts, and I'll talk to you soon. Thanks. Bye.